Revenge with Karen. I knew the day was off when the coffee tasted like burnt pennies, and my badge beeped twice at the elevator, like it was second-guessing my life choices. I'd been at Quantrex Systems for 15 years, longer than some of the plants in the lobby, longer than 3 CFOs, longer than our current CEO's sobriety streak, if the holiday parties were any indicator. But that morning felt like the air had been vacuum-sealed in Dread and Chanel knockoff. I sat down at my desk like I always did. 7:12 a.m. sharp, stale banana in one hand, budget discrepancy report in the other. My inbox was already a funeral march of urgent requests from people who thought Excel was a form of dark magic. Same old. I'd long accepted that I was the human duct tape holding middle management together, quiet, invisible, a little frayed at the edges. And hey, real quick, since you're clearly into messy office drama, click that subscribe button. Only 3% of folks who listen to these stories actually do, and trust me, it means the world to the team putting this chaos into words. Drop a like too, unless you're siding with Rachel already. Speaking of which, Rachel Merritt, the new VP, rolled in 6 months ago with perfect teeth, perfect posture, and a voice that could make good morning sound like a veiled threat. He talked a lot about alignment and synergy, and how we were going to streamline legacy and efficiencies. What that meant in plain English was, if you weren't drinking her flavor of Kool-Aid, she'd happily shove the pitcher down your throat. She started rearranging the org chart like it was a mood board. People got moved into departments they'd never heard of. Whole teams were merged and then quietly phased out. My desk neighbor, Carl, who once trained half the IT staff, was given a new title, Product Integration Liaison, which, translated from corporate bullshit, meant we don't know where to put you, so enjoy this broom closet and no health insurance. Rachel held one-on-ones like she was hosting game show eliminations. You never left with answers, just a lingering sense you'd been marked. And then came the loyalty survey. She emailed it company-wide, anonymous, of course, asked things like, do you believe your direct manager aligns with corporate vision? And would you report a colleague for unethical behavior if it benefited the company? Most folks ignored it. I filled it out honestly, maybe too honestly. I noted the discrepancies I'd seen with the Devlin contract. Our preferred vendor's pricing had jumped 27% in a month, and the paper trail didn't make sense. I flagged it. I even added a polite note. Might be worth auditing. Naive, I know. 2 days later, my calendar was scrubbed clean. No meetings, no requests, no pings. It was like I'd ghosted myself. 1 minute I was essential personnel, the next I was a rumor floating in the break room air between the bad coffee and the gluten-free donuts no one touched. Still, I didn't panic. I figured maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Rachel hadn't seen my note. Maybe I'd overstepped. Hell, I was just paranoid from too many years, without a vacation that didn't involve my in-laws and food poisoning. But then I saw Rachel in the parking lot, laughing with the Devlin rep. They were standing just far enough from the building to avoid security cams, but close enough for me to catch the phrase. I told her to let it go. She wasn't talking about her dog. The next morning, I printed out the contract summaries and highlighted every discrepancy in yellow, pink, and a shade of orange that screamed cover your ass. I didn't make a scene. I just did what I was always trained to do, follow the money, double-check the math, and raise the flag before the building caught fire. I stapled the pages, slid them into a manila folder, and walked it quietly to HR. Karen from HR smiled like she was afraid her face might crack. Thanks, Elena. We'll look into it, she said, tucking the folder into a drawer like she was filing a lunch menu. No questions, no follow-ups. She didn't even offer me a tic-tac from the jar she usually uses to pretend she's people. By lunch, the air had changed. I sat down in the break room, and 3 coworkers got up like I'd farted anti-corporate sentiment. One of them, Mark, who I'd carpooled with for 2 years, wouldn't even look at me, just stirred his sad lean cuisine like it might give him answers. The rest, eye contact became a commodity. Slack went silent. Suddenly, the only thing I could hear was my own typing, and Rachel's heels click-clacking past my office without so much as a glance. By Friday, my access to the procurement portal was revoked for security restructuring. The irony being, I built the goddamn training manual for that system. When I asked IT about it, gave me that scared cat expression people use when they're watching someone drown in corporate quicksand, but don't want to lose their shoes trying to help. Then the rumors started. I heard Elena went behind Rachel's back. She's pushing back against the new structure. Didn't she have a problem with Devlin? Sounds personal. I heard it all from the whisper echoes bouncing off hallway walls and forwarded emails not meant for me. Suddenly, I was not a team player, resistant to change. The one phrase that kept popping up like mold in a cheap studio apartment, bad attitude. I kept my head down, didn't argue, didn't defend myself. I knew how this played. The moment you raise your voice, they call you emotional. The moment you prove you're right, they call you difficult. So I smiled. I brought cookies. I asked polite questions in meetings that no one answered. I nodded when Rachel said we were redefining value streams. All the while I watched, because something was off. The Devlin payments didn't just look wrong, they felt wrong. The amounts didn't match the quotes. Dates were shifted. Vendor IDs were modified in ways that bypassed normal protocol. And the same three initials kept popping up on every approval chain, RM. But what made my stomach knot wasn't the fraud. It was the silence. The way everyone around me seemed to already know and had decided, quietly, cowardly, not to care. It wasn't just a culture of fear. It was a culture of shrug. And here's the kicker. I didn't say a word, not yet. I went home that Friday, poured a glass of boxed red, and stared at my laptop for 2 straight hours. I opened the folder marked suspicious activity, renamed it Christmas cards, and backed it up 3 times, cloud, USB. 1 copy emailed to myself from a burner Gmail I created during the last merger just in case the axe ever swung my way. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't a matter of if, just when. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays always felt like the most boring kind of betrayal. Middle of the week. No warning, no drama. You don't expect to get professionally gutted between a stale bagel and a quarterly forecast presentation. That's exactly how it went down. We were in conference room C, the one with the broken thermostat and the flickering light that made everyone look like they were being interrogated. Rachel stood at the front, smiling like she'd just won a cruise, flanked by 2 HR reps who wouldn't make eye contact. My seat still had my coffee cup on it, steam curling like a ghost over the lid. Elena, Rachel said, all syrup and sunshine, restructuring some of the roles in legacy operations. That was the warm-up. The real punch landed when she gestured toward the door. Effective immediately, your badge access has been deactivated. Your personal items will be brought to you. Disloyal employees get nothing. The room went so quiet you could hear someone's pen tap the table. Karen from HR looked like she wanted to be anywhere else, maybe a tax audit or a burning elevator shaft. No one moved. No one spoke. Just eyes flicking from me to Rachel like they were watching a mugging in slow motion. Mark stared at the table. Anna, who once cried in my office after her divorce, picked at her nail polish like it was Morse code for sorry. I stood up slowly, straightened my blazer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my cup like my lizard brain was begging me to. I just looked Rachel dead in the face, smiled, because I do smile, Rachel. Just use it like a scalpel, and said, I sincerely wish you luck. She blinked just once. I think that threw her more than anything. They handed me a sad little box with my name on it like it was my own tombstone. A mug, a stapler, a post-it pad that said you got this in rainbow letters. I didn't even bother with the plant. It had been dead for weeks, like most morale around here. As I walked out, my badge let out one final pathetic beep against the turnstile. I turned my head slightly, caught the reflection of the whole floor in the elevator doors, every face pretending to work, every back hunched just a little lower. Not one of them looked up. When I got home, I took off my shoes, poured 2 fingers of bourbon, and opened the black leather folder at the back of my filing cabinet. Inside was a USB drive labeled if they push. I plugged it in. On it, every red flag, every altered invoice, every email thread where Rachel bypassed approval. Screenshots, call logs, a full chain of custody for 3 Devlin payments tagged as emergency procurement, including one where the timestamp showed Rachel approving her own submission. I clicked open my notes from the employment lawyer. I found the contact card for the anonymous federal hotline. I reviewed the email draft I'd saved weeks ago with the subject line, Whistleblower complaint, urgent financial misconduct. The cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to flinch. I didn't. The first time I documented something fishy, it was just a gut feeling. A $9,800 charge for consulting optimization that came through on a Saturday. No consultant name, no work order, no memo. Just a line item approved by Rachel's initials and paid within 48 hours. That was month 1. By month 2, I had a spreadsheet labeled patterns hidden behind an innocent tab called 2021 reimbursements. On it were vendor codes, timestamps, irregular dollar spikes, and duplicate PO numbers were routed through new cost centers with no department head assigned. It was like Rachel had built a shadow pipeline under the actual finance systems, quiet, greasy, and just plausible enough to slide past auditors if they weren't looking too hard. I printed everything at home, never at work. I used a burner Gmail and a prepaid phone with 3 contacts: my lawyer, the Department of Labor tip line, and the compliance officer at a federal agency I won't name. I left voicemails in parking garages. I sent encrypted files from the Wi-Fi at a laundromat between 2 nail salons. I watched enough true crime to know what breadcrumbs not to leave. The labor attorney, Pamela Evers, is a former shark in corporate law who now specialized in wrongful termination and whistleblower cases. She answered my cold email in 7 minutes. When I met her, she was wearing Crocs and eating a burrito over a stack of depositions. My kind of woman. She reviewed my documents for 2 hours without blinking. Then she looked up and said, "You realize if you push this button, there's no unpushing it." "I've already been fired," I said. "What are they going to do?" "My LinkedIn." She nodded, slid a pen across the table. "Then let's light the match." I signed the affidavit under seal. Attached, 3 months' worth of internal communications showing retaliation for flagging financial irregularities, misuse of federal grant funds, and direct instructions to override standard procurement review for speed. There was even a charming little email from Rachel to HR that read, "If she won't shut up, cut her out. Call it reorganization." That one came with glitter. Meanwhile, back at Quantrex, Rachel strutted through team huddles with the smug grace of a woman who thinks she's already won. She tossed out lines like, "Trimming the fat is good for the heart, and sometimes you have to break old bones to reset for growth." The board loved her. HR applauded her. The interns were too scared to breathe around her. I watched it all from my living room with a glass of Merlot and a cat that hated everyone but me. But every victory she celebrated was built on a rotten subfloor, and I had the blueprint. Each new hire she bragged about, funded through money meant for a federal diversity initiative. Each vendor she negotiated with, paid above market rates with no contract oversight. Each person she forced out, a liability removed before they could talk. Didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge porn or Facebook exposés. I had truth, and truth, when timed right, doesn't make a sound, it detonates. The day I hit send on the whistleblower complaint, I felt nothing. No thrill, no fear, just clarity. Like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath through a 10-year fire drill. I didn't want my job back. I didn't want apologies. I wanted the machine to grind to a halt. And it had just started coughing. Rachel first smelled the smoke when the Devlin auto-renewal didn't process. It was supposed to roll over like clockwork, $220K, quarterly, no questions asked. But this time, procurement flagged it for temporary hold pending clarification. She stormed into their pod with her trademark clack-clack-clack heels and left with nothing but shrugs and eye contact that slid off her like rain on vinyl. She demanded answers. Legal's reviewing the new terms and compliance wants a signature chain this time. Rachel hated signature chains. Too many fingerprints. By Thursday, she was chewing aspirin in meetings. Meanwhile, I was quiet, radio silent, not a tweet, not a blog post, not a whimper. Just a deleted LinkedIn job title and a 3-word status: onward, upward, unbothered. But the ripples were widening. One of my old colleagues, Emily, one with the plant mom mug and a drawer full of anxiety meds, texted me a screenshot of an internal audit memo titled Contract Review Historical Overlap Concerns. Underlined in red, Devlin Solutions, March 2022 to present. Pending inquiry. Her message came in right after. "Did you send something to compliance? What's going on?" I didn't reply. Let the silence do the talking. Back at Quantrex, Rachel called a transparency sync with the board to reassure them. She smiled through her teeth, told them the procurement hiccups were part of a new governance initiative, said they were getting ahead of risk, said collaboration across verticals twice and integrity-first culture once. It worked, mostly, until legal chimed in and asked why certain Devlin invoices had no backup documentation. Why one of them was signed at 2:12 a.m. by Rachel's login. Why 2 internal reviewers had mysteriously changed their feedback from hold to approve within minutes of submission. Rachel blamed the system. called it an old glitch, promised to get clarity by EOW, but her smile was cracking, and her mascara wasn't waterproof enough to keep up. In the background, more oddities emerged. Facilities claimed they couldn't account for 2 high-dollar training sessions billed by an outside consultant. Turns out that consultant didn't exist, at least, not in any HR registry. The contact email linked back to a now-dead Gmail account. The W-9 was missing. The payment, approved, guess by who? The board started whispering. A week ago, Rachel had been the golden girl, cutting costs, flipping charts, delivering numbers the CFO could brag about. Now she was a question mark wrapped in a PR liability. And I was sitting at my kitchen table, watching a raccoon try to open my trash bin, sipping lukewarm tea, and reading a mystery novel like nothing was burning. Because the thing about fire is, once it starts, it doesn't care who lit the match. It just finds oxygen. And Rachel, bless her black little soul, had built her whole house out of dry, brittle paper. She just didn't know it yet. Rachel started sweating through her blazer the morning the audit team asked for hard copies. Not PDFs, not spreadsheets conveniently lost in migration. They wanted original, time-stamped documentation, printed before my last day. She knew what that meant. Her panic came camouflaged. She called it an operational deep dive. She barked at finance to reconfirm archival baselines. She stood in the doorway of records like a mob boss in a J.C. Penney suit and demanded someone find the signed procurement logs for Devlin's February invoice, one that went through with no matching deliverables and a billing code borrowed from our IT disaster recovery fund. No one could find it because it never existed. The auditors weren't dumb. They were ex-IRS and corporate bloodhounds who could sniff bleach on a whiteboard. They didn't flinch when Rachel claimed it was all part of a digital migration issue. They just handed her a printed list of items to produce, circled in red. 47 in total. It was dated before April. Half of them should have had my signature. They didn't. In a moment of desperation, Rachel pulled aside Jess, the quiet finance assistant with a penchant for Bob Ross pins and herbal tea, and asked if maybe, possibly, she had copies of the original reconciliation folders. Jess didn't miss a beat. Elena kept all that. Her files were cleaner than ours, more complete. She flagged a lot of stuff, actually. Said we might need it someday. Rachel nodded and walked away slowly, like someone backing away from a bear. That afternoon, she called me. My phone lit up, Rachel M. Mobile. The same number she used to text me great work, after I helped slash $80K off our onboarding budget last fall. The same number she used to send office selfies from happy hour while I stayed late fixing vendor mischarges she didn't have bandwidth to deal with. I let it ring. Then I blocked it. 10 minutes later, I got an email from Karen from HR. Hi, Elena. We'd love to get your insight on some historical documentation. Strictly informal. Let us know a time that works for you. I forwarded it to Pamela, my lawyer, with one line, shall we dance? But under the calm, I'll admit it, I was terrified. Not of Rachel, not of HR, but of the system. Because if the company circled wagons, if legal buried enough paper, if someone upstairs decided protecting Rachel was easier than exposing her, then all of this, all the sleepless nights, the documentation, the risk, meant nothing. And if I got branded as the disgruntled ex-employee, I'd never work in compliance again. Pamela called that night, said the feds had acknowledged receipt of the affidavit. It's on their radar now, she said. They're sniffing around. I took a breath, leaned against the fridge, and tried to remember how to unclench my jaw, because this wasn't a victory. Not yet. This was the slow-motion part of a train crash, right after the brakes fail, but before the metal hits flesh. And if I was wrong, I was standing on the tracks. It landed on a Wednesday. Always the midweek, always the quiet hours before lunch when no one's armor is up. Rachel was in her glass fishbowl of an office, probably reading some bullshit leadership blog when her assistant tapped twice on the door, pale as printer paper. There's something for you. From the Department of Labor. A manila envelope, official seal. Hand-delivered, not mailed. No courier sticker. No signature required. Just a whisper of doom handed through a six-figure salary's worth of glass and smugness. Rachel slit it open with a letter opener shaped like a katana, because of course it was, and pulled out 10 pages of federal ice water. At the top of the first sheet, subpoena for document production in the matter of Elena Hayes v. Quantrix Systems. The blood drained out of her face so fast you'd think someone yanked her plug. Her assistant, usually bubbly, a little too fond of exclamation points, just stood there, holding her iPad like it might catch fire. Rachel, read the name twice, 3 times. She mouthed it like it was a foreign word. Elena Hayes. She hadn't said it aloud in weeks. She'd erased me like bad data. Scrubbed me from org charts. Pretended I was a phase the company had outgrown. Now I was a line item in a federal investigation. The subpoena requested all communications involving Devlin Solutions, all financial records tied to consulting optimization funds, internal HR documentation regarding performance-based terminations between Jan-May, all correspondence, digital or physical, referencing or pertaining to Miss Elena Hayes. That last one must have felt like a slap dipped in lemon juice. Downstairs, 2 board members had already gotten wind. One emailed legal. One cornered Karen from HR by the vending machine and whispered something about liability exposure and early disclosure clauses. The house wasn't on fire yet, but smoke had entered the ducts. That same afternoon, I was folding laundry and listening to a podcast about forensic accounting when Pamela called. "They bit," she said. "We're officially in the investigation phase." I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just sat down on the edge of the bed and let the moment wash over me like a cold tide. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity, like the universe had stopped gaslighting me for just one goddamn second. That night, I logged into the alumni Slack thread. Quietly. An observer. Thread had started as a joke, a place for former Quantrex employees to post memes about printer errors and share recruiter tips. But lately, it had grown teeth. Someone posted, "Is Rachel still queen of the castle?" Someone else replied, "Heard the drawbridge just snapped." I didn't chime in, didn't have to. Because now the room didn't whisper about me, they whispered because of me. And Rachel had finally learned what it feels like when the silence isn't obedience. It's the prelude to collapse. The email that cracked it all open wasn't even encrypted. Just a plain old Outlook forward someone in finance had saved just in case. Subject line, urgent process ASAP body. We don't need full compliance on the grant stuff. Get it through before someone upstairs starts asking questions. I'll own it if it blows back. Rachel Merritt, that last sentence was pure prophecy. The auditors handed it to legal with a quiet, shared look. Within hours, legal scheduled a closed-door incident alignment with the board. It wasn't a meeting, it was a reckoning. Phones off, doors sealed. Every director suddenly more interested in the paper in front of them than their posturing. 2 days later, the CFO resigned to pursue personal opportunities. The company gave him a gold watch and an NDA thick enough to choke a donkey. Rachel, on leave pending internal review. Translation, quarantined until they could decide whether to throw her under the bus or rebrand her as roadkill. Her parking spot was empty. Her Slack profile quietly deactivated. Her favorite ergonomic chair, gone from the office like she'd never existed. All that remained was her perfume still clinging to the upholstery in conference room B like regret. Then HR reached out to me. The email was all lowercase concern and saccharine corporate tone. "Hi, Elena. Hoping to get your perspective on some legacy documentation to help us contextualize current findings. Would you be open to an informal chat?" I didn't even blink. Just forwarded it to Pamela, who replied, "They can contextualize my retainer." I replied once. 4 words, "Talk to my attorney." It felt better than any monologue I'd rehearsed in the shower over the past 2 months. The next day, I walked by the building. Not for drama, just coincidence. Was headed to the tailor next door. But I paused across the street for a minute. Same glass facade. Same buzz of fluorescent tension inside. I watched the front desk. Karen from HR shuffled past with her tablet clutched like a shield. Mark from sales rushed out with 2 phones and a face like someone had stolen his bonus. The energy had shifted. No more invincible buzz. Just damage control and backpedaling in $600 shoes. Pulled my old badge out of my coat pocket. Still dead. But in that moment, I realized something. They'd killed access to a building. Not to power. I'd never felt lighter. I tossed the badge into a public trash can and kept walking, head high, back straight, heart strangely quiet. Not proud, not smug. Just resolved. Rachel had built her kingdom out of shortcuts and scare tactics. And now that it was collapsing, she couldn't even scream, because every brick falling was stamped with her signature. And mine was on the subpoena. Rachel didn't even get a farewell email. No "please stay in touch," no inspirational quote, no cookie-cutter bullet list of vague accomplishments like helped streamline legacy systems. Just silence. One day she was on leave, the next, her profile vanished from the directory like she'd been abducted by corporate ghosts. Her LinkedIn, deactivated. Smug professional headshot with the curled-under bob and transformational leader tagline, gone. Her online footprint scrubbed clean, like she'd never existed outside of her own delusions. Word inside was, she'd been terminated without prejudice, but everyone knew what that meant. They gave her enough severance to shut her up, but not enough to make her forget. No lawsuits, no admissions, just a quiet execution in a glass boardroom at 7:30 a.m., witnessed by legal, one board rep, and a guy from PR who probably spent the whole time Googling how to spin misuse of federal grant funds into a LinkedIn thought piece. Me, I got a check. Not a golden parachute, just enough gold to rebuild the plane and pilot it myself. The company settled without admitting fault. A lump sum, no NDA. Pamela made sure of that. They wanted me gone, but not noisy. I agreed on my terms, because I wasn't looking to go back. I wasn't trying to reclaim a seat at a rotten table. I was building my own damn furniture. I used the funds to start consulting. Corporate compliance, whistleblower systems, internal ethics reviews, nothing fancy, nothing flashy, just surgical work, the kind of thing that prevents women like Rachel from rising without friction. I don't have a boss anymore, just clients. I choose them. I vet them. If I smell even a whiff of rot, I walk. Because power without integrity smells like a dead raccoon under a porch. Eventually, everyone notices. The irony, Quantrex sent me a consulting inquiry last month. Different manager, different department. Some innocent soul asking if I could help them restructure their internal accountability framework. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Instead, I printed it. Framed it above my desk next to a tiny brass plaque that reads, "Compliance isn't personal. Until it is." I still think about Rachel sometimes, not with anger. That's long gone. Anger burns hot and fast. What's left is colder, more precise. It's the memory of a woman so obsessed with loyalty she forgot it has to be earned, not enforced. That control without trust isn't leadership, it's fear in heels. In the end, she was right about one thing. She said, disloyal employees get nothing. And maybe I wasn't loyal to her. But to the truth, to the quiet, boring, unglamorous integrity that keeps the walls from crumbling, I was loyal as hell, and I got everything. This one hits different because sometimes the quietest people have the most dangerous receipts. What really stuck with me was Elena's patience. She didn't shout, didn't burn bridges. She built a case, waited, and let the truth do the damage. Honestly, that's real power. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.